What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new video, a little bit of a different video today. I'm going to be going over the things that I wish I knew when I first started lifting. My goal for this video is for y'all to be able to take away at least one or two things that you can implement into your own lifting journey and hopefully into a better physique or a healthier version of yourself, right? I don't claim to have all the answers. I don't claim to be perfect, but what I can do is I can share my personal experiences and things that have worked for me and things that have also worked for many of my clients. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's get started. So when it comes to your training, I find that for me, 4 to 5 days a week is really that sweet spot to not be overtraining, but also have enough time to give my muscles a proper stimulus to grow. And I think one common mistake that a lot of lifters make is they're in the gym, 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And you got to remember that just as important as the training is, you got to prioritize your recovery as well, prioritizing the sleep. That's really where the growth happens. And as many of y'all know, I am a former musician, right? And one of the things that my teacher would always harp on was quality over quantity. You want to build quality over quality. Quality over quality over a long enough time frame, that's how you really build something amazing. And the same thing applies into lifting. Quality reps, right? Quality sets. I think it's so easy to go in there and just ego lift and move the weight and just be distracted. And when I go into the gym, I really like to be focused on building that mind-muscle connection, focusing on maximum range of motion, right? A weight that I can control, a weight that I think will be challenging by the time that I get to rep 12 or 15, right? That's kind of a really good sweet spot, especially if you're trying to put on muscle. But really focusing on quality reps is the number one most important thing that I think has allowed me to make the amount of progress that I have in the amount of time that I have, right? I've been lifting for just over 5 years now, and I'm very proud of the physique that I've been able to achieve. And that's definitely a cornerstone in my lifting is quality. So along with that, how many reps, how many sets, right? I think so many people, and I see this with my clients too, right? Their program might say, 3 sets of 12, right? They'll do just that, 3 sets of 12, and they'll stop on rep 12. And the issue with that is that you're leaving gains on the table, right? When you're trying to put on muscle, you need that proper stimulus. You need to give your muscle that signal to grow. And when you are not pushing that muscle close to failure or to failure, you're really leaving a lot of gains on the table. Now, as a beginner, you could really do anything in the gym for that first year, maybe even 2 years. You could make all the mistakes and still make a lot of progress. But especially as a natural, once you get into that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year mark, you got to dial these things in a lot more if you want to continue to see progress. So definitely make sure that you're picking a weight where by the time you get to rep 8 or 15, you're approaching failure. And that's kind of how I gauge it, right? I've never been one to be super, super strict on tracking, like on bicep curls or isolation movements like tricep pushdowns or stuff like that. Like I will literally just go until I can't, or really just focus on getting a big squeeze, a huge pump, a lot of blood flow into the muscle, especially when I'm doing isolation exercises. Now, with compound movements, that's a different story, right? So especially in your first year or two of lifting, I think it's extremely important to focus on progressive overload, progressing over time, right? Whether that be with adding more weight to the bar, doing an extra set, doing more reps. You want to make sure that you're tracking your main compound movements, because in a workout plan, especially in your first year or two, those main compound movements are what's going to help you build that foundation, that solid foundation that you're going to build on over the coming years, right? And one mistake that I made, especially starting out, is I did a lot of isolation exercises and I put on a lot of size, but I didn't have that density and that kind of quote unquote thickness that a lot of other people had. And I wasn't very strong either. But once I started committing more time into my compound movements, I actually felt like I had the strength to kind of build my physique even more, if that makes sense. But progressive overload, especially in those first 2 years, is extremely important. Now, here's the other thing. Pre-exhaustion, which is something that I didn't start incorporating into year 3 or 4, which basically means that this is a different style of training, right? So basically you start with an isolation movement before going into a compound movement. So Nowadays, when I'm doing a chest day, I will start with a chest fly and take my chest all the way to like close to failure, really treating that chest fly at the beginning of the workout like if it was my last movement, and then going into a bench press. And what you'll find is that it forces you to go lighter and it forces you to control the weight a lot more. And for me, that's been a really important aspect of my training, especially the last few years. But I would suggest for beginners, definitely focusing on the compound movements first is going to be a really, really great way to do it. You really can't go wrong as long as you're just getting in the gym and just doing the work, right? So along those same lines, warm up and mobility, something that I can't stress enough the importance of. One of the biggest mistakes that I made that set me back at least a year was, right, I was a musician and I spent 12 years playing the French horn. And when you're playing the French horn, your body is sitting in a position for a very long time, sometimes 3 to 4 hours a day for me when I was practicing, and your body becomes accustomed to those positions. And I see this a lot with my clients who are working desk jobs or jobs where, you know, they're very sedentary, and you can't just come into the gym and expect everything to be perfect, right? A lot of people, and I've never seen anybody come into the gym without any imbalances. Like, everybody's got some imbalance of some sort, and when you take those imbalances and you put them under load, you are basically increasing your risk of injury. And I'm sure all of us listening to this have heard of people that have hurt themselves in the gym. And even though they were using good form, they still hurt themselves. And that's more than likely they had an imbalance somewhere that they didn't know about, something that needed to be ironed out first, or maybe they were neglecting their warm up. Now, the really good thing is that by being in the gym, a lot of those imbalances are going to correct themselves, but there are certain exercise substitutions that you can make to target those imbalances better and then just set you up for success moving forward in your lifting journey. But that starts with the warm up and the mobility and then going from there, right? Next thing I want to talk about is deloads and rest days. So I've never been a huge fan of scheduling rest days. I find that if I want to go to the gym, I'm going to go to the gym. But what I will do is I will have a deload week every 6 to 8 weeks. And basically what that means is I'll take a week where I might go to the gym only 2 or 3 days. And when I do go to the gym, it'll be at like 50 or 60% intensity. Because with the way I train, and if you really, really train hard as a natural lifter, you're gonna get to a point where, you know, your energy levels are a little bit lower, or your sleep isn't as good, or your recovery isn't as good, and maybe your joints are aching. Whatever the case may be, your body sends you signals that it is fatigued. And when I get to that point, I make sure to take a deload, take it super easy, and when I come back the following week, I'm feeling refreshed, much, much better. And I find that this is a key principle that has allowed me to put on the amount of muscle that I have over the last 5 years, which I think a lot of people aren't doing. A lot of people are just going into the gym and just doing as much as they possibly can, right? But you got to remember, less is more. You want to build that quality over time and really focus on getting the most bang for your buck, especially with, you know, a lot of people that are busy professionals nowadays and just people who are working that 9 to 5, you want to be in and out of the gym in less than an hour. And really, it shouldn't take that long to get a good workout, right? So lastly, in terms of like training and whatnot, I want to talk about genetics. And genetics are something that is not really talked about enough, right? So you could be doing everything that I'm telling you in this video. You could be, you know, training the right way, eating the right way, doing all the things, and you may still not look how you want to look. And in the same way that, for example, NBA players, they've got the height genetics. You need to be a certain height to even be considered to play in the NBA, right? For me, if I were to train perfectly, if I were to want to be a basketball player and I had everything dialed in, I had the talent and I had all the ingredients, if I don't have the height, I'm not going to the NBA, right? Because I don't have the genetics for it. Some people have better genetics for basketball. Some people have better genetics for football. Some people have better genetics for swimming. The same thing applies here. Some people have better genetics for putting on muscle. And so I think especially with the rise of social media, it is so easy to compare yourself to others, so easy to compare yourself to this person's physique or that person's physique. And you just got to remember that you're on this journey on your own, right? And as long as you're staying consistent and you're doing your best and you're doing everything that you can to be in the best health of your life or have the best physique you've ever had, like, that's going to be the most important thing, because everybody's best is going to look a little bit different, right? If everybody was capable of getting that insane physique, then nobody would have an insane physique, right? And that's just the way the world works. And that's been a really important thing that I've had to keep in mind, especially in the last 2 years. So as far as nutrition goes, protein intake, obviously extremely important. I find that the moment that I increased my protein intake, I started putting on way more muscle. And I would say 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight is really that sweet spot. So if you're 200 pounds, 200 grams of protein, probably at the top end, you could probably get away with around 170 grams of protein. I do like to make sure my protein is coming from whole foods. And if I'm gonna throw in a protein shake, it might just be at the end of the day if I'm a little bit low on my protein for that day. For me, I've never, the last 2 years, I've never really had issues with getting my protein intake. It's actually more challenging for me personally to get in my carbohydrates for the day. But I know the protein intake is very, very challenging for many people. And as long as you're tracking it and hitting that number every single day, you can ensure that you are putting your body into as much of an anabolic state as possible, especially if you're combining good recovery and good sleep along with that. So hydration, electrolytes, and carbs, again, hugely important. I can't even tell you all the amount of times that I've been training a client in person and they might start to feel dizzy or nauseous, and I ask them if they ate, and 100% of the time the answer is no. And it's just, I like to eat my carbs around my workout time. I like to make sure I'm hydrated, drinking water, electrolytes, right? Everything I want to make sure is dialed in so that I can have the best possible workout. Because if I don't do those things, the workout will be compromised, and then that workout is my time, right? As I said earlier, you want to make sure that you are maximizing your time in the gym. And part of that is making sure that you are giving your body the proper environment to have the best possible workout. So hydration, electrolytes, carbs. Once you start doing those things, it's very hard to not have a good workout. Next up, supplements. One personal pitfall that I've fallen into is thinking maybe if I take this supplement or that supplement, I'll be able to do this or that. Like, there is no single supplement that is going to be able to do the work for you. And as long as you're focusing on the 3 main pillars, which for me are sleep, nutrition, and training, if you have those 3 things dialed in, it's going to be really, really hard to not make progress. And I find, right, as busy as we all are, right, working the 9 to 5, or whether you're doing, you're just super busy and stressed, like if you have 2 out of those 3 things dialed in, I find that you can still make a lot of progress. Even better if you have all 3 of them dialed in: your training, your nutrition, your sleep. Making sure those are a priority is going to make sure that you are able to see as much progress as quickly as possible. So lastly, I want to talk about stress management. Again, this is something that's not talked about much. From what I've noticed, some people are better able to tolerate stress than others. And, you could be doing all the right things, right? Just like the genetics, you could be doing all the right things. But if you're stressed and you are not managing that stress well, you're not going to see the same amount of progress that you could be seeing. So there's really a lot of factors into this that play into building the best physique possible or being in the best health of your life. And for me, I like to be in control over as many variables as possible. And if I can make sure that all of these things are dialed in and do that over a long enough time frame and stay consistent with it, that's going to be the most important thing, right? And I want to leave y'all with this. If you take a piggy bank and you put 1 penny into the piggy bank every single day, you put a penny, nothing happens. You put another penny, nothing happens. Penny over penny over penny, nothing happens. But eventually, the piggy bank will get to a point where it cannot hold any more pennies. And that's kind of what lifting is like, right? You are in it, 6 months, 1 year, year and a half, 2 years, you still don't have the physique. 3 years, some people it might take them 4 or 5 years. But I find that as long as you keep chipping away and you keep showing up and trying to learn and trying to optimize and trying to do your best, that's really what it's about. When you do your best and you're on your own personal journey, on your own time frame, that's what makes it a rewarding journey, and that's why we do what we do. So, like I said, I don't claim that any of this is the most optimal way or the perfect way to train, but these are just things that have helped me build my own physique, and I hope that y'all are able to take 1 or 2 things and apply them into your own journey. With that being said, if you made it to the end of the video, I really appreciate you. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.